You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Chris Dreyer, CEO of Rankings.io, host of the Personal Injury Mastermind, and now author of Niching Up. The narrower the market, the bigger the prize. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well. Benny, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Congrats on the book. That's super cool. I've been seeing the posts about it, and it looks very interesting. I read like a few of the pages this morning.
Nice.
Congrats. That's really awesome. And before we get going, talking about like a little bit of your background, I just wanted to say, man, I had a great time on your podcast. I hope everybody checks it out. Personal Injury Mastermind. So well done. And I'll tell you, I got that email when you dropped the podcast that had it had like images and it had a couple clips. I was super excited. I thought it was so well done. And so thanks for having me, man. That was really cool.
Yeah, of course. That was a great conversation. And yeah, it's just a lot of fun. I really enjoy the podcasting, and I as you do as well. And it's a great way to meet people. Yeah,
for sure. I love doing the podcast. It's like so much fun. So like, tell us, like, so when you're not helping personal injury attorneys dominate like the first page of rankings, now you're writing books. Like, tell us, like, first of all, tell us like how you got into SEO, because that's basically your main thing, right?
Yeah, taking it back.
Back to the Double Chin website. Let's hear about it.
Yes. Hilarious. I'm glad you pulled that one out.
Yeah, man.
I went to college. Before I went to college, my parents were like, really wanted me to go. And I said, hey, I'm going to go to college, but just so you know, I'm going to start my own business at some point. They're like, cool, go. I went initially for computer science. I took all the hard math classes, got through them, and then decided I didn't want to pursue that.
Okay.
And ended up with a history education degree because I have a little bit of a background in sports. And I know we talked about that before the podcast, but I ended up getting a job at a high school as a detention room teacher. And the reason I took that was because I got to coach, and it counted every year that I did the detention room towards my teaching track. So if I did 2 years detention room, I would do 3 years teacher.
That's interesting, because I'm going to start. I read that you did work in the detention room, and I actually think I wrote down one of the questions later. Like, you worked in the detention room. Like, can we just go way off track and ask you, like, what was the craziest thing you've seen in a detention room?
Oh, geez. Fights. I don't know how explicit I can be on here, but I will tell you.
Was it like The Breakfast Club? Was it like the classic 80s hit motion picture, The Breakfast Club?
I wish it was like that, but it was no more cursing me out or just being terrible. Gotcha. But the principal was like, you know what? We need to keep these kids busy. The truant kids, the kids that relate, that just, whatever reason they were in there, dumb reasons a lot of times. There are some legit reasons they're in there. But he brought in these Time magazines, and he's like, I want them to write an essay during lunch. I'm like, okay. I'll have them write an essay. Those magazines, you can imagine what those magazines turned into and what the pictures look like over time.
That's awesome.
Every figure in those. But it was a brutal job. But I did have a lot of downtime. Sometimes I wouldn't have any students at all. And I Googled how to make money online, the worst query ever. I found Ed Dale's 30-day challenge to make your first $10 with digital marketing.
Okay.
Took that course. My first website was losethedoublechin.com.
It's amazing.
I think I made $20. But by the end of my second year teaching, I was making about 4 times the amount doing that than I was teaching. I was ranking number 1 for staining concrete, acai fruit, double chin,
right.
Phrases. It was a big joke at the school. All the other teachers would like make fun of me for like ranking for double chin and stuff. But I'm like, look, I would show them my affiliate balance.
You'd be like showing
making money.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then they still gave me hassled me, but
They probably wouldn't like this day and age because it's sort of like the norm for people to go like get a side hustle and find like their
yeah.
thing, right? So
hmm
so you started off that way. You were like, well, maybe I can make something out of this like full time.
That's at the point where I was making significantly more. It was an easy transition to pursue it full time. And I had a buddy that I'm a huge nerd. I played a collectible card game called Legend of Five Rings, and I was a top player.
Nice.
And this was another top player, but he started doing digital marketing, and we were buddies. So I moved to Florida to have him mentor me. He was way deeper in the game. His name is Ryan Carter, and that's what we did. I went all in, but around 2012, the first Penguin algorithm, the really bad Google update that no one wants, hit me, and it took my income from quite a bit to basically nothing.
Really?
So I was faced with this decision of the effort and sacrifice it had to take to resurrect it or just go get a job. And I went and got a job at an agency, rose to be their top guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of got to see the consulting side, the agency side. And I like to say I learned what not to do.
Okay.
And I decided it's a lot of people think of this. They think, oh, I can do better. And that's what I thought. And I went out and started my own. Since then, I was trained my replacement. It's very above board, never poached any of their clients, really was looking at it from the long game as a referral partner. They went a whole different direction. They're no longer in business,
right?
For a variety of reasons, but that's how I got started in the digital game.
So when you say Google changed their algorithm and you went from doing pretty well to like, it just decreased, like, is that something you have to worry about now, like the Google algorithms and kind of
Oh yeah,
staying on top of it?
absolutely. It's something here's the deal. Back then, I was not looking at the long game. My content wasn't good enough. My link quality wasn't good enough. And my risk tolerance for my own risk at the time, because I had nothing to lose.
Right.
Really, just go get a job teaching again. I go get a job somewhere else. I had nothing to
Yeah.
lose, was very high. And I learned now, like what not to do. And I treat my clients very seriously because I know what can happen. So if you focus on quality content, a good website, and good links, when these algorithm updates occur, if you're doing the right stuff, you normally benefit.
Really?
That's the big secret in the SEO space.
Okay.
Everyone's talking about these algorithm updates, but if you focus on quality and algorithm update hits, the people that are gaming the system, they are the ones that drop, and you tend to get more market share if you're looking at the evergreen perspective.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
that was just a shift and a big a lot of learning lessons for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's so you really kind of took that to the next level. Like you sort of like you went off on your own. You started your agency. Like, how did you know it was time to do that?
Just the numbers made sense too. I knew at the time I was making like my salary, it was like 50 grand.
Yep.
And I just thought in my head, if I could get a couple clients pay me $2,500 a month, I would do all the work. I would just crush it for them.
Right.
And it wasn't like this huge number that you couldn't fathom. It was just a couple clients to replace my income. I ended up doing that the first month. Literally.
Yeah, sure.
Now, back then, I took projects that I wouldn't even conceive or even consider. It was like basically whatever you needed Chris to do, I would do it because I had to make revenue. I had bills, and I had to. I remember this one time I took 10 audits and I charged $500 a piece, and it took me like so much time. I don't know what my hourly rate was, but it was just brutal to do it. But I took it. I had to get my foot in the door.
So how did you like? Why lawyers? Like, why did you finally come to the sense? Like, I want to work with lawyers. And by the way, like, not only like just lawyers, but like you really work with like the top, right? Like your work right now. But as a general matter, why did you decide to turn to the legal profession? And I know I read in your book like you're even though you're sort of niching up that word. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get that word right, but even though you're niching up a little bit, you don't necessarily like turn away everybody. You might here and there take somebody. We'll talk about that, but So like, why lawyers though?
The biggest, a few reasons, and I'll be really transparent and candid on one of the reasons that you may not expect. First was I was working at the agency and they had a lot of lawyer clients. I was very comfortable with them.
Okay.
I like the competitive side there. It's not just sneeze and you rank number one. So I'm a very, come from competitive background, zero sums game, winner and loser. I like that in SEO. I like that perspective of competing. The other thing was I was looking for an industry that had been around for a long time. I didn't want to go all in and then it change. There's legal profession's been around for a long time, very stable. It might change, but it's been around for a long time. The third reason, if I'm being really honest, is a little bit of status of working in the legal profession and being able to say to my friends and family, hey, what are you doing? I'm doing marketing. Well, I'm doing marketing for attorneys.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. And I'm transparent there.
That's cool.
Obviously. So that's kind of how I got in the game and why I chose legal.
So like one question I was curious about, say you have two clients that are like from the same area, they're both like and you focus on personal injury. So like say they're both personal injury attorneys in the same state, like what do you do like to differentiate them? Like if you're trying to get somebody first on the Google page, like is it the keyword? Like how do you manage that?
Any of my competitors listening are like their eyes are about to pop out of their head or ears, whatever you want to say, because they want to hear this answer.
Nice.
So my coaches and my consultants will tell me 1 is a client, 2 is a conflict, 10 is a specialization. I'm just being real with you. That's what my coaches and consultants will say, right?
Okay.
For me, it's more an integrity thing in terms it's not all about wealth, right? In taking 10 like a scorpion or fine law. It is how many clients can I reasonably help and generate an ROI for their investment? In some markets, that's just one.
Okay.
It's just one. If you're in a state like Texas, and let's just get a city like Houston, it matters where your office is.
Mm-hmm.
If you're downtown versus 30 miles northwest, you don't compete because the maps is based upon proximity. So in some markets, you can take more than one client, and it's okay.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. So it is. So there is like some conflict of interest sort of thing.
There is.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I think that's important to highlight because I wouldn't have known that there is like a conflict of interest sort of scale that you're looking at when it comes to if this guy had 101 Main Street Office A and the other one personal injury had 101 Main Street Office B. They're doing the same thing, but they share a fax machine, a copier, but they're both like trying to get out there.
Yeah. And there's differences, right? One attorney could focus on single event car accidents and stuff like that, where another one might focus on something like med mal, right? Some car accident attorneys don't do med mal cases, right? So there might be a circumstance where you could take 2 there. There's not a conflict. You can be really transparent and have those candidates. I think the issue with lawyers working with SEO agencies is it's all hidden as secret. They find out later that they're working with a direct competitor. But like if you have these candid conversations, hey, this is a med mal attorney. They're not competing for the same cases. What do you think? A lot of times they're like, cool, go for it.
Oh, so you tell them. You have to tell them.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. I think that's really important to know. I mean, this is something that, I've talked to a couple people who do specialize in SEO. So I really, after thinking about it, like I started to wonder like, well, okay, like what do you do if the person's in the same, so that's helpful, Chris. Thanks for like sharing that.
Yeah. The one other thing I'll say is we do, just for us specifically, we do the headquarters for exclusivity because it's very common in the legal profession for attorneys to open like a whole bunch of satellite offices and regises and all these non-manned offices. But, you really need to have a physical real office. So that's the last thing I'll say on like the exclusivity.
Okay. So let's shift gears. Tell me what made you want to write a book?
So many reasons. I feel like the people know me for SEO and digital, but I really enjoy the game of business, and I read a ton of business books. I read 50 to 100 every year, and I've been doing that
Wow.
for 10 years. I love the game. The big nerds, the gamers listening, the ones that like RPGs where you build, and you're leveling up your guy and you buy better equipment and better castles or whatever. That's kind of like what business is.
Okay, so let me.
You're leveling
You
up.
do you do any like any metrics with like fantasy football or basketball or anything? Or
I used to be really into fantasy
okay,
football,
all
but
right.
I had to stop. I was
No,
too
I was just
obsessed.
asking you if maybe you ran like some program like 10,000 times, and I could like
Mm-hmm.
send you a message like, hey, like who do I need this week? All right. Anyway, back to the book. So you decided to you're into business. You read all this material every
Mm-hmm.
year, and people view you as like the SEO guy, and like your presence on social is out there. We see you, and you wrote a book, niching up. How do you want to say niching today? Niching.
I go with niching just because riches are in the niches.
Okay, so
Everyone's
you
heard
wrote
that
a book,
phrase.
niching up.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us why. Continue.
The main reason is because a lot of coaches and consultants tell businesses to niche or to niche,
Okay.
but there's not all the books out there. I couldn't find one that really gave like an all-encompassing book on the pros and the cons. It's not all pros. It's not all sunshine and roses or whatever the quote is. There are actual cons. The
Oh
one
yeah.
con that everyone hears is you shrink your total addressable market, your
Right.
TAM.
Right.
But there's more than that. There's industry risk for the attorneys listening. Imagine you are a cruise line attorney,
Mhm.
right, during COVID. Terrible, right? You got to scramble. You got to figure out how to pivot. There's the biggest con that people don't talk about is an increase in effort and sacrifice by the consumer. And then let me explain that. I'll give you two examples. I'll give you mine. If you're an attorney that wants to work with a digital agency, and I just do SEO, that means you got to work. If you want to do PPC or media buying or TV, you got to go work with someone else. So you got like multiple points of contact. It's
Mhm.
more effort. You got more people to talk to, vetting. That's a con of niching. There's a
Right.
reason why Walmart now has groceries, why Sam Walton added groceries to their stores. It's
Yeah.
because it's more convenient. They're already going to the store. You want to decrease the effort and sacrifice.
Right.
In my opinion, that's it's even a bigger con than the total addressable market, because here's the big secret about the total addressable market. There's a thing called acquisitions.
Mm.
Whenever you have the capital, you can expand your TAM.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's never talked about, an increased effort and sacrifice.
Right. So I think you just covered some of the negatives. I was going to ask you about like the pros and cons of
Sure.
niching up. So if you want to explain go a little bit further with that.
Yeah, another con, I'll do one more other con, is for creatives. And okay, let's put this in a perspective for like firms. And I'm going to get binary here, and it's not all exact like this. But typically and I'll do PI, and you have like a settlement firm, the mills, right, that are trying to do a lot of stuff pre-lit,
Yeah.
productized, very consistent XYZ, similar workup, similar write-ups, very productization. Then you got the trial attorneys who they get a case and they have to build this narrative, this story. They got to go deep, and it's bespoke. It's a
Right.
blank canvas. The two ways to scale there, so basically where I was going with this to kind of circle back is, if you don't like doing the same thing frequently, niching may not be for you, in terms of, because doing just car accidents all the time, because there's no there's no creative side.
Right.
So that can be an issue.
Well, I mean, are you talking like niching up like with what you're doing? You're talking about you're telling attorneys to niche up. Like I think,
Well,
I've
just
met
any
people.
business in general. Let me do a different example.
Okay.
Let's say, for example, and let's talk about efficiencies. Okay, let's talk about the pro. So let's circle to the pro. Imagine if Henry Ford, on the assembly line, he's got his black Model Ts. He's like, you know what? That 7th car, I think it would look good red. Oh, this one should have bigger tires. What would happen to the throughput? It would be terrible.
Yeah.
You lose a lot of efficiency. So there are these pros and cons when it comes to like productization for any business. And we have to be aware of those. Other pros on the pro side, there's a perception of expertise and authority.
Okay.
In the medical profession, do you want a general practitioner to do brain surgery, or do you want a brain surgeon? Right. But here's the dirty little secret. That brain surgeon, they all have their first brain surgery.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah. So you got to like start somewhere, I guess, right?
Right. But other pros, so the efficiency, the perception, conversions, because you're speaking the same language, you have an avatar, you're copywriting your messagings to a very particular subset of individuals. You can maximize your marketing spends because you know where to advertise. It's for the legal profession, it's really advantageous for referrals.
Right.
Because referrals, you have no operational costs, so you're looking to maximize those fees. So you want to go to an expert. And so there are pros and cons. I would say the other thing that's not talked about is in the legal profession is differentiation. Everyone says, oh, you need to have positioning. You need to have a unique selling proposition. How does the law firm do that? How do they do that? Especially your PI attorney. You can't do it by price. Everybody's doing contingency. Maybe you could lower your rate, but that's not really a great positioning point of view. So you can look at demographics. There's some strategies around that. You can look at entertainment, the Hammers, Legal Eagle, stuff like that. There's a Legally Blonde attorney, an immigration attorney. But niching, going narrower and deeper is a way to differentiate. And in my opinion, it's wildly, it's not used enough in the legal profession. It's wildly underserved.
So when you say the narrower the market, the bigger the prize, like, can you explain that to us?
Yeah. With narrowing your positioning comes with all these benefits. When you improve your efficiencies and you eliminate waste, you improve your profit margins.
Okay.
Because you get more efficient in these actions. You can get greater fees from a case. I use Joe Freed as an example. Great guy, national trucking attorney. Who's going to get more from a trucking case? Joe Freed or someone that's just done a few trucking accidents?
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Right. So when do you know that you should niche?
That's the toughest, most difficult thing. There's a book called Range by Epstein. He uses the example in the book. He talks about Rafael Nadal. Nadal's parents put him in basketball and baseball and all these different sports. I don't remember the exact sports, and tennis. Now, through that, he found a natural propensity and passion for tennis, and he's fantastic. But can you imagine if his parents just said, hey, we're just going to put him in basketball? So from that example, my recommendation is to have all these experiences and do a lot of different areas of the law and have these experiences, and then find where you have a purpose, a passion, and where you can generate a profit. The 3 Ps: purpose, passion, and a profit.
Purpose, passion, and profit. So how do you deal with, like, you get clients now, but you're niching? Like, you might turn away certain clients? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, when some people just want to take it all in, but you're trying to really niche up here. So, like, how do you deal with turning away clients?
The easiest way is to set up reciprocal relationships. If I am not accepting a case, it may not be right for me, but it may be right for someone else.
Okay.
And the same thing could occur. And in legal, that's typically out of state. Get an out of state lead, and you can still monetize it. but it could be as simple as that early example. You've got Elk and Elk that specializes in med mal. Well, a lot of single event car guys don't do med mal. Well, the med mal guys might not do the car accidents. So you could refer to that individual. There's a lot of other parallel areas of law that you can naturally just set up these reciprocal relationships, and it can be a really nice method of not only lead generation from reciprocity, but it can also lend itself to just collaborative relationships and marketing potential opportunities.
Sure. So you would encourage attorneys to niche up. I mean, I know you work in. Are you talking beyond personal injury? Like, should they just do trucking accidents? Should they just like slip and falls? Should they just do, like, I don't know, mass torts or like things that are like, are you saying like within personal injury they should niche up into like one certain area?
1,000%, especially if you're a trial attorney.
Okay.
1,000%. There's a reason why Mike Papantonio has mass torts made perfect.
Right.
There's a reason why Joe Freed just does trucking, and you've got the guys that just do nursing home abuse, and it's because it works, and you're top of mind when there's a referral opportunity, and you get pulled into co-counsel and all these different scenarios.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's super interesting. Like, if I actually was still practicing, I would definitely want to niche up and like be become an expert in like one little area that I could just, be that person that people turn to, and do that work for them. So I think that's sort of, I want to make sure I'm on. So that's sort of how I would.
Yeah. So it creates a lot of opportunity, and that's honestly why I called it niching up.
Yep.
It's because when I hear niching down, it automatically makes me think of like a scarcity mindset of having less. But I'm trying to have a little divergent thinking here. It's like it actually can create opportunities when you do narrow your focus. Better profit margins, more referrals, better unique positioning. There are a lot of benefits, and just when I hear niching down, I think of like scarcity and less.
What about a small town attorney though, like who like might not have the opportunity to, take on like a million like personal injury cases and get those settlements, so they have to sort of do a will here, a family law case there, a DUI here. What do you tell them?
That's a really good question. You definitely have to have a big enough addressable market.
In a big enough market, you just need a big marketplace. Yeah.
So if you're in a smaller market, you're going to have to take multiple areas of the law, or you're going to have to do something from a nationwide perspective.
Right. So why is it important to simplify? I know you talk about simplify a little bit, like in the book.
Mm-hmm.
So why is that important?
When we're looking for profit, a lot of times, people talk about increasing your fees or to increase profit margins and to get more leads and all these things. But what's not talked about enough is eliminating waste. And this is a Six Sigma type of philosophy.
Okay.
If you're eliminating waste, you don't have to staff up for certain things. You have these repeatable processes, and you could actually, your cases become more profitable.
Okay.
Because of these efficiencies. So simplifying it lends itself to less errors. And that's what it's all about. It's all about profit. And another thing is the frequency. You might be able to settle a case or try a case quicker. There's speed and velocity components to it, and that's just one of the advantages that isn't talked about a lot.
Gotcha. But why is it also crucial to keep like a broad awareness of things, even if you niche up?
When we're a few reasons: to look for opportunities, to also make sure that your industry isn't at risk, so that you have the ability to pivot, so that you have these contingency plans. Also, you can glean strategies from other areas of the law.
Yep.
And what other individuals are doing. We all start off, and this is the teacher coming out of me, so forgive me. we start out at the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. We have like recall. We can read something, remember it. Then you have application. You can go do it. Then you have analyze. All right. And then you start to get to the top where you can synthesize. That's a hard word for me to say, and create.
Right.
At the very top. So when you have this specialty skill, you can be aware of these other areas and apply it as a benefit to yours.
Okay. So why would you recommend attorneys, people in SEO, read your book?
A number of reasons. If niching can be very advantageous because it can improve your positioning, can improve your profit margins, can help you stand out, can make a business that thrives. And I wish I had a better answer, but that's the name of the game, right? Is there's a lot of times in the PI space particular, it's so saturated. It's so competitive. I'm going to pick up my phone here, right? We're all sentients. We all have our mobile device within hand. And if you think of your business as like a kid's lemonade stand, where all lemonade stands are on the same street. That's what we're living in, the mobile phone. How are you going to be different? For a lemonade stand, you'd have, is it frozen lemonade? Is it a large? Is it organic? They deliver to the car. Now use that exercise for your firm.
Right.
How are you going to be different? A consumer can go right to the website, look at all the law firms. How are you going to be different? And niching does that. It's a great way to position yourself to create a unique selling proposition in the legal field where it's very challenging to stand out.
Right. So how are we going to push niching even further? Get your book out there and beyond your book. Are we going to get t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts? Like, what are we going to do, man? I think you have like a logo here. I think you have a brand with niching. I mean, let's talk. I mean, I haven't seen it. I think we got to go full on with it.
They go full on. We'll see what happens. I got a lot of stuff in the works, a lot of promotion. I got a special guest, a special celeb I'm trying to lock down to narrate my book. And
really?
Yeah. So hopefully it comes to fruition. And yeah, it's just, I think it's something that a lot of people just think of the negatives for niching, but there are a lot of positives.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's great to be sort of hyper focused, and I don't know if you think it means hyper focused. To me, it is sort of like hyper focusing on like one area. Mm-hmm. Being the best, like leaving everything else there. Like, I think people want to go to an attorney who has the expertise in one niche. So I think like that's really important. What else can you tell us that we haven't touched on? Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I was just going to share that just on what you're talking about as expertise and focus, as Malcolm Gladwell says, you need 10,000 hours in a discipline to become an expert. If you're doing all these different cases all the time, you're never going to become an expert in one of them. If you focus, that can give you the expertise. Also in the book, don't let me fool you. Like, I have done this very wrong. I'm very self-deprecating in the book. I remember when I just started my agency, I was in Vistage. It's a peer advisory group, a bunch of business owners. I did my business review, and they were all like, you know what you need to do? You're doing so well for lawyers. You need to open up for home services and physicians. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I need to do that. And I did that. And I started growing more slowly. I wasn't growing as fast. I'm like, what happened? My TAM's bigger, but what happened was I was trying to speak to everyone, and I wasn't specific enough. And so I've took my licks, and I've kind of learned by doing, and it's been an interesting process.
So what advice would you give somebody who wants to niche up?
I would say to look at the data, determine if you have the ability to generate profit, if you have a passion for it, and if there is purpose there. Because at the end of the day, if one of those is missing, it could really be bad, right? There might be scenarios where you need to work where you don't want to, and it's a stressor. You might pick a niche where there just isn't enough profit. The TAM's not big enough, or the practice area is not big enough. So you really need to have all three and really analyze the situation.
Yeah.
If you're finding it more and more difficult to stand out, that could be a way of standing out is by niching.
Gotcha. So is there anything else we left out that you would like to share, Chris?
On the book, I would say I think we covered it pretty well. I think we covered the pros and cons pretty well.
Okay. Do you want to quickly give us like the three like the biggest mistakes that lawyers are making with their SEO?
Oh, geez, the biggest mistakes. Number one is reviews. Reviews are huge. Reviews affect Google screens and map rankings. It's significant. It's how consumers search. Please don't just ask for a review at the end of the case when the case is finished. Look for moments of delight. Have a process, commission your employees, incentivize them not to buy reviews, but to incentivize that behavior, create a process that lends itself to a great customer experience, and do those retrospectives there. So really focus on reviews. That's a big one. Number two is, I understand your practice area pages are written, but those are your sales pages. Those need to be refreshed frequently because those are your most important pages because they convert to clients. And number three, learn about how to build links and acquire links. Links are those votes that help move you up in the search results, and it's incredibly important to obtain them the right way.
That's amazing. Chris Dreyer, thanks so much. I'm pumped about your book, Niching Up. The narrower the market, the bigger the prize.
Yes, sir.
So congratulations to you. Thanks for coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, thank you. This has been awesome. A lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Stay right there. Everybody else, thanks for tuning in. And wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.